Hi, my name is Dr. Jeff Gardner. This is a video in response to a question posed to me by a colleague, Nancy Flory. That is, the question was, can I talk about how teaching and learning happens within my discipline? Um, Now, I teach at Regent University, which is in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I teach in the College of Communication and Arts. I teach courses on communication, on media. I teach some courses in the School of Government. But across, and within, I should also say within the graduate program, but across all of those courses, there's one area in particular of the required activities for the semester that I have learned needed a different approach, that is pedagogically, that is as a teacher, to achieve a different result among the students, that is as learners. And that area is the necessity to develop great written communication skills. Now, we all hear, going through undergraduate school and maybe even graduate school, that writing is a process, writing is rewriting. Well, what I found over the years is that for students to sort of wrap their heads around that, first conceptually and then practically, that is actually do it, that preaching the line was not merely enough. Because what I found is that one person's interpretation of rewriting, and it might vary from another, and it might not serve the the purpose, the point of the adage, that is to develop a good piece of writing, one rewrites it. So I asked the question, in all practicality, what did I think that means to the learner? Well, for many of them, it especially those that have not spent a lot of time writing during their undergraduate career, it means writing over and over the same text, but not in the practical sense of rewriting the text. How to get at that problem? Well, that question was foremost on my mind for many semesters, and finding an answer to it and a solution to the problem that I perceived amongst my graduate students was pushed to the forefront by the standard schedule imposed on most university instructors, and that is, and this was the expectation of my department. I should not say schedule, but I should say expectation of research writing among students, and that is topics were either assigned at the beginning of the semester, or students were encouraged to select a topic and have it approved by the instructor. And then the rest of the content for the class was poured out during the semester. All the while, on their own, the students were pursuing their research and writing. And the completion of that is their final paper, was presented at the end of the semester to the instructor. Now, that's been the model. Actually, that's an adaptation of the pedagogical model that first characterized universities in the Middle Ages. But I found it's not well adapted to the needs of learners in the 21st century, nor is it well adapted to the practical demands on teachers in the same period. Here's why. In a typical semester, say when my teaching load is light-ish, or when it's heavier, the number of graduate students that I will be responsible for ranges from anywhere from 80 to 150. The end of the semester, that is the last day of class, is typically 4 or 5 days away from the deadline for final grades. In spring, it tends to be a little tighter. The registrar, needs additional information beyond just the final grade in order to make preparations for graduation. So 4 days with a student load of, say, an average semester. It's very typical for me to have a student load of 120 to 120 PhD, and then some master's students mixed in. And the expectation at the departmental level that each research paper ranged somewhere between 20 to 25 to 25 to 30 pages. That meant for me as an instructor, within this course of 3 or 4 days, I was being asked to read critically and comment constructively on some 3,000 pages. Now, I pride myself on being an apt reader and analyzer, but there is simply no practical way that I could give the same amount of attention that every student deserves an equal share of my attention and my evaluation to 3,000 pages. And even if I could, what I found by speaking to my students about feedback that they received to me and being honest about my habits as a graduate student, very few of them have the opportunity or take the time to carefully consider the remarks that I made to them on their papers at the end of the semester. Many of our students are working. Some of them are in their chosen fields. Some of them are working hard to receive the advanced degree to change fields. Their husbands, their wives, their parents, the opportunity to sit down and to critically analyze and then to internalize my remarks. And even if I had the time to make detailed remarks, simply not there. So it wasn't practical on the input side, on the instructor's end, for me to be able to say something meaningful, and it wasn't practiced on the learner's side that they would sit down and take to heart whatever I'd had to say in the first place. What to do? What to do? Especially in the face of many students that reach the graduate level that do not have a lot of experience as as writers, and are unaware that most of the world, whether that's professional or personal, will meet us through our writing, struggled with not just the mechanics of research, but the mechanics of writing. Well, all of those realizations taken together caused me to seriously rethink how it is that I assign and evaluate research papers. So I broke with my department. There's no hard, fast rule that says do it this way or else. And instead of assigning a topic at the beginning of the semester and asking for a paper at the end, I would allow them to select a topic at the beginning of the semester with the very clear instructions that we were splitting the research paper into two parts. The first part would be due 2 weeks before midterm of the semester, and the second part would be due at the end of the semester. The first part consisted of the 3 core chapters of the paper, that is the introduction, the literature review, and the methodology. And then the final part consisted of the data, the analysis, the conclusion, the reflections on limitations and possibilities for future research, as well as going back to the beginning and writing the abstract. In doing this, I think one of the challenges has been to get students to accept that within the course of about a month and a half, they would have to produce 3 finished chapters, not draft chapters, not polished chapters. The second challenge came to me as an instructor was to make sure that if I was going to design an exercise that gave me the time to read more deeply and to write more productively to my students, then I had to make sure that I gave myself the time. So within that week that the papers are due, I purposely reduced the normal workload, that is chapters or articles to be read, summaries to be written, discussions to be had. I dropped that workload down significantly, or depending on the number of students and the complexity of the class, to nothing. And during that week, when those first 3 chapters, when the first half of the paper came in, I dedicate myself entirely to reading deeply and evaluating critically their writing, their research methodology, their gathering of data, their proposed analysis of data, their ability to formulate a hypothesis, a research question, to frame an argument, to even in many instances construct a sentence. And I am in no way trying to be critical in a dismissive, derogatory, or otherwise condescending manner to many of the learners in advanced degree programs. But I have realized over the course of many, many years as a university instructor that there has been a widening of acceptance and recruiting for students to receive advanced degrees, which is a good thing. But many of them coming into advanced degree programs have not had rigorous training or even really good training as writers. So during that first week, I evaluate their papers very carefully. And then for those that I can see plainly that really need assistance, especially with the rudimentary elements of writing, I insist in a very helpful, encouraging way that we speak on the telephone about their paper. I suppose within the framework of the exercise, the other thing that I do as a teacher and encourage my students to do as learners is to be very careful about the vocabulary that we use in our minds when evaluating our writing. Because moralizing, the writing is bad, I'm bad, it doesn't say what I want, I can never say what I want. For any individual, whatever those particular words might be, any moralizing does absolutely no good. There's no help at all. So many students are surprised to receive papers back from me upon which there are 4 or 5 or 6 or more comments per page. So those that I can see are that are really struggling, I insist that we have a talk, that we go over the work, and those that are, that I think are okay, I give that as an option. Now, back to the rhyme and reason, that is the adage that writing is rewriting. I tell my students right on the upfront that writing is rewriting, and what we're going to do, when I say we, I mean them, is rewrite part 1 when they complete part 2, and that's due at the end of the semester. And I tell them that if they make the corrections in part 1 that I suggested and do more of the things that are working well in part 1 when they write part 2, that I retroactively change the grade for part 1. And I intentionally grade rigorously in part 1. So again, in addition to the multiplicity of comments from me, many students are surprised to receive a paper back in a graduate course that's been assigned a grade of C or even C minus. I do that not to talk down to or to tell the student, you really can't write. What are you doing here? And in fact, I'll even go out of my way to say, you've got a great idea. This needs development. Let's talk about that. But rather, I am quite deliberately trying to get their attention. I'm quite deliberately trying to tell them that as a communicative exercise, that this writing is ineffectual. It's not doing what it's designed to do. And let's talk about how we get it to do what you want to do. So after the week, after I return the papers, and I'm a rigorous disciplinarian with myself and my time to make sure that they get this back. Then throughout the course of usually the next 2 weeks, within my office hour, I'll block out half an hour sections of my office hour to meet by phone or Zoom or Google Meet or whatever they like with my students. Go over the comments on the paper, the correction, and all the while reassuring them that writing is rewriting. And when they rewrite this and score higher, I'll retroactively change the grade on this first part of the paper. Now, by way, I've not quantitatively tracked the results of this approach, but reflecting on it, and I was speaking with Nancy earlier today about this, reflecting on it in a non-methodological qualitative way, I can say that I do see advances, improvement in my students' writing. I think one of the things that encourages me the most is the feedback that I get from the student, because most of them that don't write well are aware that they don't write well. There's the rarefied few, and I don't think any of them. I could count on one hand over the course of many years I've taught at university, with fingers to spare, the number of students that were arrogant about their inability to write and their unawareness of that deficit. So there's not a position of pushing us. There's not an air of demand. Well, you must give me the grade that I deserve. That really, those are outliers. That doesn't enter into the equation. Overwhelmingly, the students that I work with, the adult learners that I work with, I find that they want to know. And they have experienced what many of us as writers do, as professional writers, that when we submit something to a publication, whether it's academic or otherwise, and it's rejected, editors and owners of these publications or conferences, they don't tell you. I mean, you get something like the standardized canned language. Oh, very interesting, but this isn't what we're looking for at this time. All right. So how is someone to know what it is that their writing lacks, or is that they're doing as a writer that's taking away from the clarity, unless we tell them? And how are they to know what it means when we say that writing is rewriting, unless we walk them through the process? And good to our word, if we say that this is a process, then in my opinion as an instructor, so too should the evaluation. That is, it is a progressive exercise. This is, and I tell my students this sometimes, point blank. This is not an exercise that's meant to see how high you can jump. Can you get over the bar? Can you grab the dollar bill that we're dangling from here, that little reward, the carrot? And if you fail to hurdle the bar, or if you fail to grab the prize, this is not an exercise in which we say, oh well, that's too bad. Better luck next semester. It's not effectual, and it's really not fair. All right. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I hope that I've answered the question of how it is that teaching and learning happens in my discipline. And it's been an absolute pleasure to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Thank you so much.